The Wind and a Boy by Bessie Head. Like all the village boys, Friedman had a long wind blowing for him. But perhaps the enchanted wind that blew for him filled the whole world with magic, until they became ordinary, dull-grown men who drank beer and made babies. The little village boys were a special set all on their own. They were kings whom no one ruled. They wandered where they willed, from dawn to dusk, and only condescended to come home at dusk because they were afraid of the horrible things in the dark that might pounce on them. Unlike the little girls who adored household chores and drawing water, it was only now and then that the boys showed themselves as useful attachments to any household. When the first hard rains of summer fell, small, dark shapes, quite naked except for their loincloths, sped out of the village into the bush. They knew that the first downpour had drowned all the wild rabbits, moles, porcupines in their burrows in the earth. As they crouched down near the entrances to the burrows, they would see a small drowned nose of an animal peeping out. They knew it had struggled to emerge from its burrow, flooded by the sudden rush of storm water, and as they pulled out the animal, they would say, pityingly, "Birds have more sense than rabbits, moles, and porcupines. They build their homes in trees." But it was hunting made easy, for no matter how hard a boy and his dog ran, a wild rabbit ran 10 times faster. A porcupine hurled his poisonous quills into the body, and a mole stayed where he thought it was safe, deep under the ground. So, it was with inordinate pride that the boys carried home armfuls of dead animals for their families to feast on for many days. Apart from that, the boys lived very much as they pleased, with the wind in their own games. Now and then, the activities of a single family could captivate the imagination and hearts of all the people of their surroundings. For years and years, the combination of the boy, Friedman, and his grandmother, Sejosenyi, made the people of Gasefet, Molemo Ward, smile, laugh, then cry. They smiled at his first 2 phases. Friedman came home as a small bundle from the hospital, a bundle his grandmother nursed carefully near her bosom and crooned to day and night with extravagant care and tenderness. "She is like that," people remarked, "because he may be the last child she will ever nurse. Sejosenyi is old now and will die one of these days. The child is a gift to keep her heart warm." Indeed, all Sejosenyi's children were grown, married, and had left home. Of all her children, only her last-born daughter was unmarried, and Friedman was the result of some casual mating she had indulged in a town 100 miles away where she had a job as a typist. She wanted to return to her job almost immediately, so she handed the child over to her mother, and that was that. She could afford to forget him, as he had a real mother now. During all the time that Sejosenyi haunted the hospital, awaiting her bundle, a friendly foreign doctor named Friedman took a fancy to her maternal, grandmotherly ways. He made a habit of walking out of his path to talk to her. She never forgot it, and on receiving her bundle she called the baby Friedman. They smiled at his second phase, a small, dark shadow who toddled silently and gravely beside a very tall grandmother. Wherever the grandmother went, there went Friedman. Most women found this phase of the restless, troublesome toddler tedious. They dumped the toddler onto one of their younger girls and were off to weddings and feasts on their own. "Why can't you leave your handbag at home sometimes, Granny?" they said. "Oh, he's no trouble," Sejosenyi would reply. They began to laugh at his third phase. Almost overnight, he turned into a tall, spindly-legged, graceful gazelle with large, grave eyes. There was an odd, musical lilt to his speech, and when he teased, or was up to mischief, he moved his head on his long, thin neck from side to side like a cobra. It was he who became the king of kings of all the boys in his area. He could turn his hand to anything and made the best wire, cars with their wheels of shoe-polished tins. All his movements were neat, compact, decisive, and for his age he was a boy who knew his own mind. They laughed at his knowingness and certainty on all things, for he was like the grandmother who had had a flaming youth all her own too. Sejosenyi had scandalized the whole village in her days of good morals by leaving her own village ward to live with a married man in Gossifete Molema ward. She had won him from his wife and married him, and then lived down the scandal in the way only natural queens can. Even old age, she was still impressive. She sailed through the village, head in the air, with a quiet, almost expressionless face. She had developed large buttocks as time went by, and they announced their presence firmly in rhythm with her walk. Another of Sejosenye's certainties was that she was a woman who could plow, but it was like a special gift. Each season, in drought or hail or sun, she removed herself to her lands. She not only plowed but nursed and brooded over her crops. She was there all the time till the corn ripened and the birds had to be chased off the land, till harvesting and threshing were done, so that even in drought years with their scanty rain, she came home with some crops. She was the envy of all the women of the surroundings. Sejosenya always eats fine things in her house, they said. She plows and then sits down for many months and enjoys the fruits of her labor. The women also envied her beautiful grandson. There was something special there, so that even when Friedman moved into his bad phase, they forgave him crimes other boys received a sound thrashing for. The small boys were terrible thieves who harassed people by stealing their food and money. It was all a part of the games they played, but one which people did not like. Of them all, Friedman was the worst thief, so that his name was mentioned more and more in any thieving that had been uncovered. But Friedman showed us how to open the window with a knife and string. The sobbing, lashed boys would protest. "Friedman isn't as bad as you," the parents would reply, irrationally. They were hypnotized by a beautiful creature. The boy Friedman, who had become a real nuisance by then, also walked around as though he were special. He couldn't possibly be a thief, and he added an aloof, offended, disdainful expression to his pretty face. He wasn't just an ordinary sort of boy in Gossifete Malema ward, he was. It happened, quite accidentally, that his grandmother told him all those stories about the hunters, warriors, and emissaries of old. She was normally a quiet, absent-minded woman, given to dreaming by herself, but she liked to sing the boy a little song now and then, as they sat by the outdoor fire. A lot of them were church songs, and rather sad. They more or less passed as her bedtime prayer at night. She was one of the old churchgoers. Now and then, she added a quaint little song to her repertoire, and as the nighttime firelight flames flickered between them, she never failed to note that this particular song was always well received by the boy. A little light would awaken in his eyes, and he would bend forward and listen attentively. "Welcome, Robinson Crusoe, welcome," she would sing, in clear, sweet tones. "How could you stay so long away, Robinson? How could you do so?" When she was very young, Sejosenye had attended the mission school of the village for about a year, made a slight acquaintance with the ABC, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the little song about Robinson Crusoe. But girls didn't need an education in those days, when plowing and marriage made up their whole world. Yet Robinson Crusoe lived on as a gay and out-of-context memory of her school days. One evening, the boy leaned forward and asked, "Is that a special praise poem song for Robinson Crusoe, grandmother?" "Oh, yes," she replied, smiling. "What great things did he do?" the boy asked, pointedly. "They say he was a hunter who went by Gedaside and killed an elephant all by himself," she said, making up a story on the spot. "Oh, in those days, no man could kill an elephant by himself. All the regiments had to join together, and each man had to thrust his sword into the side of the elephant before it died. Well, Robinson Crusoe was gone many days, and people wondered about him. Perhaps he has been eaten by a lion, they said. Robinson likes to be a solitary person and do foolish things. We won't ever go out into the bush by ourselves because we know it is dangerous. Well, one day, Robinson suddenly appeared in their midst, and people could see that he had a great thing on his mind. They all gathered around him. He said, "I have killed an elephant for all the people. The people were surprised. "Robinson," they said, "it is impossible. How did you do it?" The very thought of an elephant approaching the village makes us shiver. And Robinson said, "Ah, people, I saw a terrible sight. I was standing at the feet of the elephant. I was just a small ant. I could not see the world anymore. Elephant was above me until his very head touched the sky and his ears spread out like great wings. He was angry, but I only looked into one eye, which was turning round and round in anger. What to do now? I thought it better to put that eye out. I raised my spear and threw it at the angry eye. People! It went right inside. Elephant said not word, and he fell to one side. Come, I will show you what I have done. Then the women cried in joy, "Loo, loo, loo!" They ran to fetch their containers, as some wanted the meat of the elephant, some wanted the fat. The men made their knives sharp. They would make shoes and many things from the skin and bones. There was something for all the people in great work Robinson Crusoe did. All this while, as he listened to the story, the boy's eyes had glowed softly. At the end of it, he drew in a long breath. "Grandmother," he whispered, adroitly stepping into the role of Robinson Crusoe, the great hunter. "One day, I'm going to be like that. I'm going to be a hunter like Robinson Crusoe and bring meat to all the people." He paused for breath and then added tensely, "And what other great thing did Robinson Crusoe do?" "Tussa," she said, clicking her tongue in exhaustion. "Am I then going away, that I must tell all the stories at once?" Although his image of Robinson Crusoe, the great hunter, was never to grow beyond his everyday boyish activities of pushing wire cars, hunting in the fields for wild rabbits, climbing trees to pull down old birds' nests, and yelling out in alarm to find that a small snake now occupied the abandoned abode, or racing against the wind with the spoils of his latest theft, the stories awakened a great tenderness in him. If Robinson Crusoe was not churning up the dust in deadly hand-to-hand combat with an enemy, he was crossing swollen rivers and wild jungles as the great messenger and ambassador of the chief. All his activities were touchingly in aid of or in defense of the people. One day, Friedman expressed this awakened compassion for life in a strange way. After a particularly violent storm, people found their huts invaded by many small mice, and they were hard-pressed to rid themselves of these pests. Sejo Senye ordered Friedman to kill the mice.